Alrighty guys, welcome back to the video. Today we're going to be doing the ultimate med guide for Escape from Tarkov. So this is going to cover absolutely everything you need to know about meds in Tarkov, everything from the type of injuries you can get in raid to the type of debuffs you can have. And in researching this video, I actually found a bunch of interesting stuff that even after playing Tarkov for around 3 years, I still did not know about the game. Now I have broken this down into specific parts, so you guys can go through and have a look at all of the different sections, for instance medkits and then painkillers and injury treatment and so on. But if you guys are new to Tarkov, I would highly recommend watching the whole way through this video, because there are a lot of things about the medical system in Tarkov that aren't exactly obvious from your first look at it. Now this video did take a massive amount of effort to put together guys, so if you do get something out of it, please sub down below. We're trying to hit 1k by the end of the year and you guys have been absolutely crushing it. Also, a massive thanks to BSG for retweeting my video about how to cure heavy bleeds the other day. You guys are absolute legends. But without further ado guys, let's get into the ultimate medical guide for Escape from Tarkov. So for those of you guys who are really new to Tarkov, each specific part on your body has a pool of health, and if you get shot in that part, you will only take damage to that part until its health pool is depleted, at which point it will begin to spread to the rest of your body. Now you will also have a total HP down the very bottom of your character, and then also a hydration and energy status, and those are currently the only ones you actually need to worry about. Temperature, radiation, and intoxication are ones that will be coming in the future, however they're not currently implemented in the game. Now you have three options to actually use any medical item in Tarkov. You can either right click and click use and it will automatically pick a part to apply it to. You can drag and drop it from your inventory, or my preferred favorite is to actually hover the med you want to use before you've actually gone into raid and press 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 0. That's going to quick bind it onto your hotbar, so if you need to use it instantly, you don't need to open up your inventory to actually apply the med. Simply press the corresponding key and your character will automatically apply it to a part of your body. Medical items in Tarkov come in 4 major forms: medkits, painkillers, injury treatment, and then also stimulants. There is a little bit of crossover between the two. For instance, a lot of the stimulants, such as Propital, will also give you a painkiller effect, as will adrenaline. However, this will give you a rough idea of what you're going to be using all of these different items for. Okay, so let's get into the debuffs, guys. One of the most basic debuffs you can get in Escape from Tarkov is a bleed. Now, bleeds come in 2 different forms now. They come in both light and heavy bleeding. Light bleeding can simply be patched by a bandage or most common medkits, whereas heavy bleeding requires special medkits or other special treatment to stop. Now, just to quickly get you up to speed, the way bleeds are applied in Tarkov is based on a per non-destroyed limb basis. Now what that means is if you have a stomach blacked out, you'll not actually get any bleed damage applied to that part. So you will take a lot less bleed damage per second if you are pretty much completely blacked out and you just have a thorax and maybe a leg and an arm left, versus if you actually get a bleed and you have absolutely no blacked out parts. The main difference between heavy and light bleeds, aside from the slight energy loss and blood trail left by the heavy bleed, is a very, very drastic increase in the amount of HP that you will lose per healthy part. So as you can see here, we have 1.33 HP per every 10 seconds for the light bleed and 2.25 HP per every 10 seconds for the heavy bleed. Now, they're actually applied at slightly different time intervals. The heavy bleed will apply its damage every 4 seconds, but the light bleed will apply its every 6. So if you get a heavy bleed, to avoid taking your initial bump of damage, especially if you have full healthy parts, you need to have something that can apply very, very quickly after getting that first heavy bleed. Definitely the easiest way to cure bleeds in Escape from Tarkov is by using the medical kits. So you can see we have here the Grizzly kit, the Car kit, the Salua kit, and the IFAK, which are all ones that most people will be rocking in most raids. So very early on, you'll see a lot of people using Car kits because the Saluas are going to get handed in for a task, and then later IFAKs become much more prominent. But at the moment, because the Salua kit will also heal heavy bleeds, it has become a lot more common. Now obviously bandages can also be used to heal bleeds, but probably the weirdest one is Zorgustin. Now Zorgustin is actually capable of patching both heavy bleeds and light bleeds, so it is actually a pretty good stimulant to keep a hold of. So when it comes to patching heavy bleeds, there's only the Grizzly kit, the Salua, the Hemostatic Injector, the Zorgustin, and the Esmarsh Tourniquet. So my recommendation for this is definitely to use the Salua kit. The Salua kit can be used for the heavy bleeds as well, and it's generally just an all-round good med kit. Okay, so on to our next basic injury, which is fractures. Now, fractures develop both from getting shot and from falling off things, and they will cause your arms to drastically increase in sway and also increase your stamina drain while aiming down sights. You're also going to incur some debuffs based on the specific arm that you black, but legs are both the same, and we'll cover that in just a second. Now, most of the effects of having fractures on either your arms or your legs can be completely mitigated by just taking painkillers, and it's actually the reason why a lot of people will pop painkillers prior to going into hot areas, just so if they do get something blacked, they're not suffering the consequences mid-fight. So there are currently 4 options in the game to cure fractures: the splints, both the single-use and alu splint, the grizzly kit, and then also the survive L surgery kit. Now, definitely one key thing to keep in mind here, guys, is because the Survive L can do fractures and can also do blacked out limbs, sometimes if you right click use, or if for some reason you have one of these quick bound, it sometimes will actually prioritize a fracture over a blacked out limb, which is very bad, okay? Usually that's not what you want to use it for, so make sure you're drag and dropping this one on if you have both of those effects on a character. Okay, so now we're going to talk about specific parts and also blacked out parts. So each part on your body starts with a specific amount of HP, and getting shot in those parts will cause the HP to drop on them. When the HP reaches 0, you will incur a specific debuff based on the part that has actually been damaged. Having your head or thorax black to active damage will immediately kill you. Moving on to the arms though, when we get these blacked out or fractured, we end up having slower search times and slower reload times depending on which arm is actually blacked. When a leg is blacked or broken, however, it's the exact same effect on both. It's minus 45% to walk speed, and you can no longer sprint. Now, you can use painkillers to negate these effects, however, when you sprint on them, it will begin distributing damage throughout the rest of your body if your leg is blacked, or it will just do specific limb damage if you have it broken. Now, when the stomach is blacked out, you incur a massive debuff to both your hydration and your energy, and it can actually cause you some serious problems in raid. And it is one of the ones that you will want to patch or virtually immediately leave raid if possible. Now, there are currently 2 ways of actually curing blacked out limbs in raid. They are the CMS kit and also the Serve 12 surgical kit. Now, they do have their pros and cons for each. For instance, the CMS is a little bit quicker. However, the Serve 12 will also cure fractures, and it does cure your limbs to a much higher level of HP. So the CMS will only cure them to 45 to 65% of their original max health, whereas the surgical kit will actually take it all the way back up to 80 to 90%. Okay, so let's move on to our next 2 status debuffs, which are Dehydration and Fatigue. Now, both Dehydration and Fatigue have a soft form, which comes on from either overusing your stamina bar or having your stomach blacked out. But the hard versions are the ones you actually need to worry about, because they will cause an HP drain per limb every second, and the second it drops either your head or your thorax below 0 HP, you will actually die to this. So this is the exact same way that bleeds are applied. It's 5 HP per part every 10 seconds for Fatigue, and 10 HP per part every 10 seconds for Hydration. Now, these are applied at different time intervals. Your Fatigue is going to be applied every 2 seconds, whereas your Dehydration is going to be applied every 3. Now, what this means for you guys is when you're actually in raid, if you are dying to dehydration, you're beginning to lose parts, you need to maintain your head and your thorax health first. You don't actually need to worry too much about losing arms or legs or anything else to the dehydration, particularly if you already have your stomach blacked out. You want to solely focus on your thorax and your head. Okay, so now with the weight system in Tarkov, there are 2 different tiers of being overweight. There's overweight and then critically overweight. When you're just overweight, you make more noise, you have reduced jump height, your stamina drain is increased, your fall damage increased, your movement speed's decreased, and your walking drains your stamina. So it's just all round a massive debuff to all of your movement statistics. And when you get critically overweight, you cannot sprint. Your max height is reduced for some reason. Your guy kind of hunches over. Your prone movement drains stamina as well. And your stance also blocks stamina regen. That means pretty much you need to chuck off your bag and pause for a second if you want to regen stam. So it's easy to see why this can be a massive debuff in raid. So as you guys are going around Tarkov, you will notice when you pick up loot, the little number down the bottom left hand side of your screen there that you can see at the moment is red on mine will begin to increase. Now as you pick up more and more items, the number in the bottom left of your screen will go from white to yellow to red, and at that point you are going to be unable to sprint. You can mitigate the effects of this using the mule stim. So the mule stim is going to increase your maximum carry weight all the way up to 118 kilograms, which is going to mean you can pretty much have TV10s, AVS rigs, packed full of stuff inside of your backpack, and you're still going to be able to run out a raid same as usual. Now that is really good for anything like Shoreline for obvious reasons, but this one here for me, I keep my container on the larger maps in case I do get some really good stuff. I'm not going to be sort of held down by having to move at a super slow pace because, to be honest, I'd rather just ditch the extra gear and leave without it. Okay, so now we're going to go over the rarest status defects. Now, a lot of these cannot actually be cured by taking any meds in Tarkov, but there are a couple such as pain and tremor, which obviously you can just get rid of using painkillers, and they're tacked onto a lot of things like broken arms, broken legs, blacked out arms, blacked out legs, blacked out stomach, and all that. They will cause pain and they will cause tremor, so you often will need to take painkillers for this. However, definitely the uncurable ones are probably the most annoying. Now, contusion, tunnel vision, and fresh wounds aren't a massive issue, but stun can be. Now, particularly with the KS-23 having star rounds added, they're essentially a flashbang shotgun round. It is very hard to get rid of this stuff once it happens. You'll see here, even on 5 times speed, a flashbang is going to do relatively the same thing that the star rounds do, and it can last for a very long time. So onto Fresh Wounds. Now, Fresh Wound is going to be a status that stays on a limb or a stomach for 240 seconds after the bleed has been patched. Now, if you take any major damage to this part after that, it is going to revert into a heavy bleed. Now, this is very important to note, particularly if you have these on your legs, because if you try and jump off anything and you take major damage to your legs, you're going to open up a heavy bleed, which can be a very big problem to deal with. Okay, so on to contusion. Now, contusion can be cured by some stimulants, but it's a fairly rare defect, so the chance that you have one of these quick bound to specifically deal with it is very low. Now, contusion happens after getting shot in the head or getting shot in a face shield, and it is going to reduce your senses by 33%. You get a slight ringing in your ears, and you also get muffled audio. Tunnel vision, on the other hand, is going to cause a vignetting of your screen, which will pulse in and out for between 30 to 15 seconds, depending on the stimulant you've actually taken. So last on our list is Berserker Mode. Now, this comes from when you get maximum level stress resistance, and in raid, when you get dropped below 20% health, it's going to initiate a painkiller effect, but you also get a pulsating FOV as well. Now, this does bug out a little bit if you have max FOV. You'll kind of start to see the black sides of your screen in some cases, but it is actually a pretty cool thing to end up having, but probably not something most of you guys will be dealing with. Okay, so let's start going through all of the different medkits. Now, the IFAK is a really good medkit to have. It actually has a 3-second use time and 300 HP, which means it's really good for patching up small damage over everything. However, unlike the Salua, it does not patch heavy bleeds. So the Salua, in my opinion, is the best all-round medical kit. Not only does it heal heavy and light bleeds, but it also has a 400 HP. So what that means is you're going to be able to actually use this a lot more than if you have an IFAK. The only downside to this is that it does take up 2 slots in your rig. Now, the Grizzly is an absolute beast of a medkit. However, being a 2x2, it's not very commonly used. However, I would actually recommend it now that heavy bleeds are cured by it, as well as fractures, and the fact that it usually has a massive HP pool. If you get these out of raid and you just keep them in your hideout and use them to heal up after raid to save a bit of money, then when they get down to around about 300-400 HP, if you've got a rig that'll actually take a 2-slot like this, take it in and use it. You'd actually be surprised how quickly you can heal back up using a Grizzly kit. Now, next up is the car medical kit. Now, I would actually recommend new players using this one because it's very easy to get your hands on. It's only 6,000 rubles from Therapist, and you can also trade for 2 duct tape for it as well, which is really good early wipe. Now, this does cure bleeds as well, but it will not cure heavy bleeds. However, having a 220 HP pool, this is actually a pretty good starting medical kit. So onto the AI2, aka the Cheese. Now, this is actually quite good for repairing splattered damage throughout your character. So if you get an arm blacked out and you get shot there again, you've got 15-ish HP lost off every single one of your parts. This is actually a really quick way to replenish all of that lost HP because of its very quick use time. Now obviously if you've got an AI2, because it doesn't cure bleeds, you're going to need to bring in some bandages as well. Now they get found all around TARKOV, but if you do find them and you're using a more advanced kit, don't just completely disregard these, particularly the army bandages. If you get bleeds, it's actually a lot better to patch them really quickly using a bandage and not lose HP off your main medical kit that you could otherwise use to heal up different parts of your body. Now for specifically curing heavy bleeds, there are currently two options in the game, being the S-Marsh Tourniquet and the Caloc B Hemostatic Injector. S-Marsh Tourniquet is the worst of these. It's a single use 5-second apply time. The only real advantage to this is that it is cheaper and it's available from lower level therapists. Now the Caloc B is actually a 3-use 3-second hemostatic, so it's a lot better than the S-Marsh Tourniquet and it's really not that much more expensive. So similarly to the hemostatics, we actually have the same type of setup with the splints. So the basic version is going to take 5 seconds to apply and it's only single use, whereas the advanced alu splint is going to get 5 uses and it's only going to take 3 seconds instead. However, as we get to the CMS kits, as I mentioned before in the video, they actually bring you to different levels of HP. So the CMS kit will actually only bring you up to 40 to 60%, whereas the Surf 12 will bring you all the way up to 80 to 90% of the original limb HP. The use times are slightly different though. The CMS is a little bit faster, but on the other hand, the Surf 12 does also remove fractures, so it's pretty even either way. So there are 3 things to consider with painkillers: the duration, the use time, and then also how many times you can use it before it's completely used up. So we're going to work our way from worst all the way up to best painkillers. Now we're going to start out with the Augmentin painkillers, which are a single use 150-second painkiller, but they take 5 seconds to apply. So in my opinion, this is probably the worst of the lot. Now the Analgin painkiller is probably the most common in TARKOV. It's a 4-use 100-second painkiller that has a use time of 3 seconds. Now it does take off 7 hydration every time you use it, so if you are dehydrated in a raid, it's not a great idea to just keep popping these guys back. Now we have all of the container painkillers. These are really long duration painkillers that have a huge amount of uses, so they're ones you keep in your secure container to pop before fights. First up is the ibuprofen, which is a 12-use painkiller that is going to last 280 seconds and it has a 5-second apply time. Then up next we have Vaseline, which is a 10-use 300-second painkiller, which takes 6 seconds to apply. And then lastly, we have the Golden Star Balm, which has the largest duration at 400 seconds. So it's a 10-use, 400-second painkiller that takes 7 seconds to apply. So longest duration of pain, but also the longest duration to actually apply. Now for my final pick for the painkillers as number 1 is the morphine injector. Now this is a 2-second apply time, which is very quick, and it's going to remove pain for 300 seconds. So this is a great one to pop if you're getting shots popped at you. You know you don't have an active painkiller. You can just rip this into your arm really quick, and then you're good to go. Now onto the injectors. Now because these have so many different points to them, I'm actually just going to let you guys pause the video as you go through there with the screenshots, because it's going to take way too long to go through all of the effects. So instead what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you what to use each one of them for and their main points, and then we'll go on to the next one. So first up we have Propital, which does act as a painkiller but mainly will give you health regeneration over time. Adrenaline has a variety of effects, but most notable are a massive increase to endurance, strength, recoil control, and health regeneration. The SJ6 Combat Injector increases your maximum stamina and also increases your stamina recovery, helping you alleviate some of the effects from being overweight. Now up next we have the Mule Stimulant, which is going to increase your weight limit for 900 seconds by 50%, but is also going to give you a slight health degeneration for 900 seconds and increase the amount of damage taken to all parts of your body except your head. Now think of the ETG Change, aka the Green Injector, as a Propital on steroids. This thing will give you a massive boost to your health regeneration for 60 seconds. Now the SJ1 Combat Injector is going to give you a massive boost to your endurance, strength, and stress resistance for 180 seconds. Zolgustin will stop heavy and light bleeds for 180 seconds and prevent any new bleeds from being formed during that duration. Now the L1 Injector is going to give you a massive boost to your max stamina, as well as a boost to your strength and endurance for 120 seconds. Now the P22 Stimulant is going to turn you into a walking tank. It's going to take 10% off all incoming damage, as well as giving a massive buff to your stress resistance, health, and vitality. Now the 3B-TG is essentially a looting stim. It's going to increase your attention and perception, which gives you the opportunity to potentially find much better loot inside of containers, but aside from that, it just gives you a stamina recovery over 240 seconds. Now, melatonin is like the P22 injector except for a much longer duration. So for 900 seconds, you're going to get a 10% reduction to all damage except for the head, and then also a buff to strength, endurance, and stamina recovery. Now, the AHF one is actually a pretty useless med. It only gives you a minor buff to health for a duration of 60 seconds. Now, the cocktail injector is probably one of the wildest injectors in this game. Not only does it last for 1,800 seconds, but it has a crazy array of debuffs tacked onto it. So guaranteed you are going to take -20 to memory, intellect, and attention, but you also have a 25% chance to pick up every single one of the following: pain, abdominal bleeding, loss of hydration, loss of energy, damage taken by 20%, so everything on your body is going to take an extra 20% damage, and then tunnel vision for 1,800 seconds. So massive array of debuffs, and the trade-off for that is you get the chance to have a +22 stress resistance, charisma, a +10 to endurance, and then also 0.5 per second stamina recovery. Holy boys, and that is it. What a massive video. Now, if you guys have enjoyed this, make sure to sub so we can crush that 1K by the end of the year. Massive thanks to all of you guys for hanging around. Peace out. I will see you on the next one.